What's up, everyone? Welcome to America Show. Rob Noor. Unscheduled random Saturday stream. How about that? Unscheduled random Saturday stream. My father-in-law sent me a video about some truck driver stuff that I thought was interesting, and I thought maybe we'd talk about it a little. Probably only go an hour or so this morning. But I don't know. I was feeling a little bored. Then I couldn't find my hat, so I had to put the old Pirates hat on. Getting ready for April. Pirates. Oh, being a Pirates fan is always fantastic. You always enter the year like, yeah, we could do it, man. Ball in April. Woo! Let's go Pirates. And then by like 2 weeks into the season, you're like, oh yeah, we suck again. We don't have a prayer. Yay! Now, I'm gonna do something. It's actually a somber day today. For those, this will be a special moment for those that have been watching my live streams this week. First thing I want to do, I would like to play some audio, and I want you to tell me if you could hear this, because I don't know how it works on StreamYard. So I figure a random Saturday stream that wasn't scheduled is a good time to test some things out. So let me know if you all could hear this song playing. Or do I have to screen share for you all to hear this? So it should be starting now. So let me know in the chat if you could hear the song. Do you guys hear the song or no? Do I have to screen share for you to hear it? No, then okay. Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna get the video demonetized here. We're gonna share this song. One of my favorite bands. I understand they hate my politics. I don't care. Drive-by Truckers. This was the song that my wife and I, or my mom and I, danced to at my wedding. I'll explain what the song's about after we play a little of it. It's one of my favorite songs, though. It's fantastic.
When he reached the gates of heaven, he didn't understand. He knew the friends were coming over. Was it all a dream? Was it all a crazy dream? He saw them playing there before him. What were they doing there? Felt like home must be alright. Or was it all a dream? Was it all a crazy dream? Memories replayed before him, all the tiny moments of his life. Lying around in bed on a Saturday morning, 2 daughters and a wife. 2 daughters and a beautiful wife.
That song by the band Drive-By Truckers. One of my favorite bands. Again, they would hate my politics. That's okay. That song, the singer, they have multiple singers in their band, but the singer Patterson Hood wrote that song about these killings in Richmond in 2006, these spree killings. And he had a friend that was a musician who these fucking animals came into the house and killed this guy and his wife and 2 daughters. And so that song's about he's in heaven, and heaven is Saturday morning with his daughters and wife. That always, now obviously I've never had my family murdered or anything, but that's how I feel. Like that's just hanging around with family. That would be heaven to me. Anyways, I thought it was appropriate. We're going to talk about truckers today. Play that song from the Drive-By Truckers. And I have some bad news. It was either that or play, the old Boys to Men. It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday. You remember the other day I was streaming and a stink bug came across my screen, and I explained that I try not to kill bugs if I can help it. And so I took a piece of paper. I took them off and I showed you all. When I came up this morning, that stink bug, I saw him yesterday while I was streaming too. He's just crawling over here to the right of me. He's like, "What's up, man? It's your space too." Right where I placed him 2 days ago on the corner of the desk on the paper. I came up today and he didn't make it. Unfortunately, our stink bug friend has passed. So it's a bummer. We're gonna put him in the garbage can here because, I might be a weird nerd, but I'm not gonna do a burial or something. So thank you, stink bug man. You brought content. What more is there in life than bringing content? So goodbye, everyone, to the stink bug. Hopefully resting in heaven with his daughters and wives right now. We'll see you. Here you go, bud. Bummer. But, maybe we'll see some more. We always get a handful of them in our house here. But, Heathen's great song, Robert. Drive By Truckers. I would say that I'm more of a Cooley fan. I've seen them 3 or 4 times, Drive By Truckers, but Patterson Hood's really good too. The artist that you all may know that was originally in Drive By Truckers, probably the one that's got the most reach, is Jason Isbell, who's good. He's very good. But of the 3 male singers in the band, he would have probably been my least favorite. Not that he's not good, but he definitely has more of a sound that you could see going more mainstream. Your band covers 3 or 4 of their songs. Yeah, they're fantastic. We used to Putting People on the Moon. We used in debate one time for an argument in debate. I don't know what my favorite. Two Daughters and Beautiful Wives, definitely, I guess, my favorite Drive By Trucker song. But good stuff. All right, so we're gonna talk about truck driver stuff. There's not gonna be a lot of people watching today. That's okay. I think tomorrow, probably my short video today, and then no, this isn't pre-recorded 9 Lives. We'll talk about food stamps and whether or not you should be allowed to buy soda, and some I told you so's I have from videos I did 4.5, 5 years ago. So we'll talk about that a lot tomorrow. One other thing I should say is maybe I went a little too hard at that kid last night. At the end, I need to get a little chill. I would never in real life, if I'm in a real debate event, go that hard on someone like F you, you mother effer, blah, blah. I probably wouldn't do that. I forget that, people are watching me and I'm not just sitting on my couch and I'm like, F you, blah, 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 insult that I would say to my friends around here. And that some people might take that the wrong way. So, but this young guy last night that called in, he's called many times. He did one of the things that chaps my ass more than anything, which is I'm like, hey, I've been streaming 3.5 hours. Okay, guys, gotta go. I'm going to spend some time with my family. We'll see you. And he's like, oh, you're cowards. You're running from me. 3.5 hours. I took anyone who wanted to call in. And then you pop in at the last minute and say I'm a coward because, I'm not going to stream 10 hours. So I was like, okay. Yeah, I meant to say you underage sounding little kid, but it just came out as a, I think he's 18. He's told me that before, but yeah, he sounds like he's 12. But if he is underage, then that's really brutal. Then I was giving him the business, but, let's see. Also, there's this guy. Let's check this out. I think this is interesting. Let's go back to the screen share. There's this guy. I noticed this. There's this guy. He'll be watching. This guy, Unholy Craft. He'll watch this video. He likes to put all these comments. I could save you the time. This is from last night. I could save you the time. The dude creates a streaming titles and asking for anti-Trumpers to call in, spends 4 hours talking to 2 other content creators and their friends visit. When he gets to debate, he proceeds to say he needs to get off for the day and only has 10 minutes to talk. The talk is sad, nor tries conversation hog because he doesn't know what's being discussed by the chatter. They discuss revising the data, the amount of Doge is claiming to have saved through their cuts, nor dodges the topic with whataboutism, comparing Doge revising the numbers of the Biden administration, down revision to the jobs reported they have gained. By the way, this is common for every year in case cuff cuff. Rob Norris here each needs to know. Nor cried about how his point is so important that the right said so that someone else's point showing his skills as father to teach good and roll, huh? Because the chatter didn't know about care about revisions, nor lied and claimed that he had a net job loss 1 year under Biden. I didn't say that. That's a lie. I said that there were months that they claimed that there was increases, but actually there were decreases. I must be a better conservative than Rob because I know that was a huge revision, not a net loss. Nor digs his heels in a point and tries to get the chatter to understand his lie. It wasn't a lie. For the uninformed, downward revisions happen all the time. Even during the Trump administration, 2019 saw a downward revision too. So did 2018. Only when the revision is huge does it become news, which is why he even knows that something happened under Biden's numbers because revision was big enough to be newsworthy. Doge is reporting the already accomplished task and figures to say report finalized, so the downward revision shouldn't happen unless those numbers weren't real and then they were just wish lists. That's what the numbers you want to reach, not the numbers you claim to have already reached. Boring stream. This guy, I love that he watches me, and it is interesting that I get to see some of his chats. I like that a lot. He's too much of a coward to call in, like all of these lefties that run their mouth. But he does like to put big, long screeds about that. I'm done answering people in comments or on X. You want to talk to me, you call in, you talk to me. You set up a debate, we talk. I'm just no longer interested in trolls like that. So let's see how this guy misrepresented me. One, I never said in that stream that there were years that jobs were reported up and then actually there was a net loss. I said there were months where that occurred. That is true. Secondly, the whole point was, yes, this sort of stuff happens all the time. The caller that was calling in and was like, oh, Doge said they saved 100 million, but actually it was only 30 million. And that proves they're incompetent. I said, well, would it also prove it's incompetent when people say we created all of these jobs and then later we find out they didn't create all these jobs? Because that's commonplace. So that was my argument. The person that's criticizing me is actually making my argument for me. Right. This sort of stuff happens all the time. And we don't say that it's an example of gross incompetence. Third, I didn't say that there were years that jobs were said to be created, but actually the net revision showed that there were a lot more jobs lost than created. And lastly, it goes to show that that's someone that would be unwilling to call in and have a conversation. When you see that they say, oh, I said that I wanted lefties to call in. I did, but only my friends called in. Well, that's not true. It is true that I know both EOD and Grid Motorsports, but the first call that called in was someone that I wouldn't say that I was friends with. I was taking calls from everyone. It's not my fault that lefty cowards like that guy who's writing in the chat would always be too cowardly to call in. Then when someone at the end of the stream, after about 4 hours, I say, okay, I'm heading out. I told people to call in on StreamYards. Constantly, I had people in the chat spamming how you could get in touch with me to go to the link in StreamYards. Instead, this person went to Discord, which I didn't even have open, and then said, oh, you're a coward. You're running from me. After I announced I'm ending the show. So I told them, okay, I have 10 minutes. You could come on the show. We'll talk about it. They come on the show. I actually stay with them for about 15 to 20 minutes. And the entire point that I'm making is, like most of these lefties, they're not just like, hey, I have a little bit of criticisms that Doge says they saved us $100 billion, but actually they only saved us $30 billion. Or I'm for cutting fraud and waste, and there's certainly a lot of it. I just have this one little issue with the one thing Doge cut. The truth is that's how they try to couch their argument, but once you get down to brass tacks, their argument is really, we don't want people cutting government spending, and this person that called in, I know that's the case because he's already told me he believes government should own the means of production. He's a socialist. So he wants big government. That's his entire agenda. So when I say, why do you not care about burdening our future children with debt? And he goes, oh my gosh, that's, how dare you? Why don't you care about the 9/11 firefighters? That's what Doge cut. And we start to get in it after he gnashes his teeth and says that, no, that's absurd to say that he doesn't care about the debt. I ask him specifically, okay, what politician are you voting for that wants to lower the debt in a way that you think is good? None. I can't think of any. So is that something you want, to lower the debt? No, I'm not concerned about that. There you have it. Anyone who's good, there's plenty of criticisms of me to make, but the idea that like, oh, I'm afraid to talk to people that disagree with me and I'm actually just sitting around talking with my friends is full of shit. Everybody who watches me knows I'm constantly asking for people that disagree with me to call in. That's what I prefer. They're cowards. They don't. Or you have at least Scratch. I'll give him credit for this. At least he's willing to call in. He always does poorly, but at least he's willing to call in. But the idea that he's going to, like, let's assume that he just tuned in at the very end. What am I supposed to do? How many other shows operate that way? Hey, I'm going to do a show from 9 to 11 taking call-ins. Okay, it's 10:59, see you all. And someone says, oh, you're a coward now. I just called in at 10:59 and you won't talk to me. Then I say, fine, I'll give you 10 or 15 minutes. Oh, Rob's still a coward. He was unwilling to give that person more time. It's a joke. But it was something to talk about this morning, so I liked it. I always chuckle when I see that Unholy Craft guys chats. It makes me laugh. So there you go. Wanted to talk about truckers today. That's why we play a little Drive By Trucker song. First, I want to play this video. This is how we'll start. Now, why do I know about the trucking industry? Well, I don't necessarily. So there, end of stream. See you later. My father-in-law is a trucker. He drives oversized loads. My wife used to drive escort car for him. So for those that don't know, there's certain regulations at a state level that you have to have if you're hauling things that are above sort of a normal regulation size. What my father-in-law hauls is houses. So one of the biggest industries in the area we live, there are basically trailer factories that make like double wide homes. And normally you're hauling what is tantamount to the size of a trailer. But most of the time there's at least 2 units that you'll drive to a site and then they connect together. They could be too high, too long, or too wide. So depending on the size of them, you have to have escort drivers. And you may have seen those on the highway. Those are cars you'll see with lights on the hood and flags, and it'll say oversized load coming. If depending on the state, the size, sometimes you need 2 escort drivers, sometimes you need 3, sometimes you need a law enforcement escort. It's my understanding that the most stringent state, at least in the area, and I think basically in the country, is New York. And so there's often times where, like I said, my wife used to be an escort driver as well. So there are often times where you'll have an escort in Pennsylvania, but when you get to the border of New York, you have to have a second escort driver meet you. And they're so strict about the regulations, it'll be stuff like this. The lights on the top of the escort car must turn at a certain rotation. So you'll have a light bar, just like a police light bar, an ambulance light bar. And there need to be 2 speeds of rotation for the lights in the light bar. So inside they have to be spinning at one certain speed, and outside they have to be spinning at another speed. You have to have flags on the side of the truck and something that reach a certain width. And you're like, but no one would really, like, it wouldn't be nitpicky if like that rotation of those lights would be just a little. No, they'll literally fine you for that. Yeah, modular homes. There you go, Dan. That's the word I was looking for. Yes, that's what he delivers. So yeah, there are people, Rage House, that will refuse to go to New York. That's certainly true because it's such a burden and it's such a pain in the ass. But that's how I know somewhat about the trucking industry, because her father-in-law is a truck driver, and a lot of his friends that I hang out with are truck drivers, and they don't view themselves as political at all. They could give 2 shits less about politics. They don't care. They're working because they have families or they have hobbies and they need to work. But what they understand is regulations. They get that. They understand when the government tells them, well, you have to do this. Another thing that you might not know, if you're driving an oversized load, and this is, you have to have a permit to drive it. And that permit has to have the exact route that you will be traveling in order to drive. And so if you're taking one of these modular homes, let's say 30 miles, and it's all interstate, basically, you have to have a permit that shows where you'll be going, and you can't deviate from that route. You can't, or it's illegal. Yeah, Nevada says, as a fellow driver myself, we don't have time for that shit, right? So we'll talk more about some of these, but my father-in-law sent me this Facebook video today, and it's something that he's talked about quite a lot. Now, unfortunately, the only place I could find this video was Facebook, so you're going to have to bear with me. We're going to stream from Facebook. Let's get the audio working there. Come on, Facebook.
To the truck drivers out there, if you haven't heard, the state of Arkansas has started pulling over truck drivers, simply asking you a few things, to read a few things, to write a few things. If you don't know how to communicate, there's a big possibility that you will lose your license, pay a fine. And I believe this is basically for they're cracking down on this whole thing with the visas. You know, obviously there's a lot of foreigners drive trucks, and a lot of them, from what I understand, got their license in, I believe, in different languages or something like that, which is, I don't understand. How do you get your CDL if you don't know how to read and write? But these things do slip through the cracks. But this is a game changer in the trucking industry, because obviously you understand that the fatalities and accidents that happen basically sometimes happen for you not simply knowing how to read a sign, right? So this might change the outlook of the industry completely. Obviously, this is, I think they're kind of gearing towards to figure out who's on these visas, the H-2B visas, the B-1 visas, or whatever they are, the foreign visas to come and drive in the United States, and you don't know how to read or write. This could literally change, because this could spread to different states, where states start adapting to this and simply pulling you over and ask you to read and write a few things. And if you don't know how to do that, I believe they're gonna either, I'll find a way for you to understand how to read and write, or you might just lose that CDL completely. But this is a game changer.
Now, I haven't looked into this specific law, but absolutely that should be the law in this country. If you cannot read or write in English, you should not be allowed to be a truck driver. How did you pass your CDL in the first place if you're incapable of reading or writing? How did that happen? Now, what you need to understand, and it might be difficult to understand if you don't understand just how crazy the regulations are for truck drivers. And, even if you're talking about truck drivers that aren't oversized load, like, you have to have special CDLs, licenses to be able to drive certain classes of truck. Now you have to have, the word's going to escape me, but you basically have computers in all modern trucks that basically are capable of shutting off your truck. E-logs, right? They're like electronic logs. There's regulations on how long you could drive. So you used to just keep a logbook. Everybody lied in their logbook. Yeah, I took a break after 8 hours, blah, 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 blah. Now you have computers like GPSs in your truck that not only keep track of that, and you'll get in trouble if your e-log shows up in, a state in Pennsylvania. It's PennDOT, Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, but whatever. Any state's Department of Transportation pulls you over, they're going to check your log. And if you're 5 minutes over when you were allowed to drive, you're going to get cited for that and get a huge fine. But some of these trucks now, they'll literally shut your truck off. And so I've had truck drivers talk about this. I talked about this a little on the idea behind this is, okay, we could all agree. We don't want truck drivers driving 50 hours without sleep. Right. And some truck drivers may do that because they feel they need to make money, and that's what needs to happen for this particular load. But in an effort to solve that, and having just a law that says, nope, you have to take so long of a break after 4 hours, so long of a break after 8 hours, and then having trucks that shut down, here's how this is actually causing more wrecks. What'll happen will be there's a big snowstorm coming, and you realize, hey, I need to get to this certain area where I could pull off before this snowstorm hits. Well, instead of normally being able to drive an extra half hour, getting there, pulling off, etc., before the snowstorm hits, now you're driving like crazy, trying to get there before the storm hits. Or you're stuck driving when you can, which means you couldn't drive 12 hours and then take a 6-hour break once the snowstorm's there and leave. Instead, you can only drive 8 hours, and then you have to start up again once the snowstorm's already going, because there's no wiggle room. The law is the law, and that's just what you have to do. There's other stories. Let's say you're on the interstate and all of a sudden there's a terrible wreck and you're stuck in traffic for an hour and a half. Well, you won't be able to, Jack the Guitar God says, I'm a truck driver, I'm working right. I think a disproportionate number of my audience are truck drivers, which is fantastic. I love truck drivers. Um, you end up getting stuck in traffic, but it's still slightly counting as your time driven. And so it'll shut your truck down in the middle of the damn interstate. Yeah, you have to go, just like all of us had to go pass a test to get our driver's license. The CDL, not only is there a written portion of the test, but there's actually, a driving portion of the test, and it's more thorough than just your normal, what is it, a Class C license, I think is like my normal license, what it would be. It's awesome. I'm glad I have a bunch of truck drivers watching. How the hell could you pass these tests if you can't speak English? Rage House says the argument isn't rock solid, Rob. You get an exemption that allows you to drive extra, but you have to have a 36-hour rest after that exemption. Yeah, I don't know the specific. I've just heard drivers talk about this. And one of the things that happens, put yourself in, so a lot of these drivers, they're going through dispatch organizations or, that's telling them, hey, you got to make this run. So imagine how this goes. Like, you're told you have to get this load from point A to point B. Then in that same town as point B, you pick up another load, you drive it to point C. Then you pick up frames or something, you take them back to point A. Oftentimes what will happen is it's damn near impossible to make that route in the time frame that's being suggested to you without doing something like driving 75 mile an hour instead of 70 mile an hour, or driving a 16-hour day when you're only allowed to drive a 12-hour day. Class D is the normal license, okay. The point I'm trying to make in general, though, is there is a lot of regulations, whether we like it or not, on your average truck driver. And these regulations oftentimes piss off a lot of the truck drivers I know. But it is what it is. You got to deal with it. That's that, okay? If you're going to get into the industry at this point, you could want the law to change, but you understand what the law is. So you deal with it. Okay? But what's infuriating is when you're told, oh, we need all of these strict regulations for you that you have to follow, and if you screw something minute up, hey, the law's the law, you're going to pay a hefty fine. Simultaneously, these truck drivers are they're stopping at truck stops, they're driving down the road, and they're seeing these drivers that are fucking insane, that don't speak the language, that don't know what the hell they're doing. And all of a sudden, these stringent regulations for everyone's safety that these truck drivers have to begrudgingly accept, it seems to not apply to people that seem to be from different ethnicities. Nevadic says it seems ridiculous because it is, but at least from my experience driving through Wyoming and Western Front, over half the drivers don't speak English. It's been that way for years. Yeah. And I'll notice it when I'm riding with my father-in-law and we'll be on the interstate and he's like, just look at the drivers in some of these cars. And I'm not even talking racially. That's not what I'm saying. Some of the drivers, there's a lot of African-American drivers that are fucking awesome. And think about it, right? You grow up in the inner city or some shit. You're young, you're looking for a job where hey, if you want to bust your ass, you could make a lot of money. Truck driving, man. It's a fantastic opportunity. It's a young man's game, though. It's hard to be at home. You're on the road a lot. But if you don't have a wife and kids and you want to save up some money and do a job that's valuable to the world, truck driving. But when he's saying look at the drivers, he doesn't mean their race or anything like that. He'll be like, you'll see drivers with their feet on the fucking dash. Or you could see in there, they'll have a screen up where they're watching a DVD or some shit. Driving some fucking... and they're all over the road. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. And he's like, it's amazing. You could just look in these trucks and he's like, or it'll be trash all over the dashboard and shit. He's like, I don't get it. And he's like, I remember one time, now, I'm going to admit to you, I'm terrible. I'm shit. I couldn't drive a truck. I couldn't. I get along just fine in my little automatic Dodge Journey. That's enough for me, right? And I certainly am no mechanic. But I remember one time, there's like 20 minutes away, there's a truck stop here from where I live. And my father-in-law was like, hey, Rob, I'm going to call that truck stop. And they got like a garage there. I got a couple things I need for my truck, that they have parts that are there. I called it in, just give them my name. They'll give you the parts. Okay, no problem. So I didn't have to know anything. I just had to say, hey, it's this guy's name. They hand me the parts. I paid for them, took them, no problem, right? But I go in there, and there's this driver in front of me who is speaking the worst broken English. And he's trying to explain to this guy at the counter of this like garage what's going on with his truck. Ben says, for $2, Rob, does the P in your hat mean Poozy Slay? I don't know what Poozy is, but no, it's the Pittsburgh Pirates. And this poor guy at the front desk is like trying to, and finally he's just like, do you have a dispatcher? Call them. And he had to like talk to the dispatcher on the phone, because this guy, not only could he barely speak English where the guy at the front desk couldn't understand him, but he didn't know anything about trucks, where he couldn't explain why his truck was having problems. And he was polite. He tried his best. But I went back and I told my father-in-law that, and he's like, oh, you wouldn't believe it, man. He's like, there are drivers that not only can't speak the language, they don't know anything. He's like, I shit you not, Rob, I've seen a truck try to pull in to like a normal gasoline pump. And I had to be like, no. What are you doing? He's like, I've seen that. A guy who's driving a truck, like a tractor trailer, and doesn't know that level of it. And then there's all sorts of other cultural problems. Now, you might think we're trashy. We are trashy. That's okay. But like this same truck stop, like this town, I'll tell you the name of the town. I don't give a shit. It's called Brookville. It's off Interstate 80. And it's got like a little truck hub for this little town. So there's a couple truck stops. And truck stops traditionally will have things like showers that you could pay for. They'll have like a gift shop. It's like a normal gas station. You'll have your sodas, stuff like that. But they'll be a little more expensive. They'll be selling other things like CBs, some other tools that you might need for a truck, And then there's almost always a restaurant. So this particular truck stop has a Denny's. So one day we're driving around, me and my wife's family and my wife and our kid. And, hey, we'll go stop at Denny's. We'll get breakfast at Denny's. And you go in, and I had to go to the bathroom. And so I go into the bathroom, and there's like 6 or 7 people in there with like almost like Bluetooth headsets in. And they're basically screaming. People in the stall. You can't even see them that are screaming. I don't know if they're talking to each other or if they're having this conversation through their headset. One dude, now keep in mind, there is a separate area that has showers that you pay for that's a reasonable price. One of these guys has his shirt off as he is washing himself in the sink. And I'm just like, what? Like, what is happening here? Like, this guy I follow on X, he calls himself the disrespected trucker. Here's what he puts up the other day here, yesterday. Now listen, I have no problem with people because the defense of this is, well, this guy's a Muslim. right? And they wash their feet 5 times a day for the religious practice. That's absolutely fine. I don't have a problem with that. Like, I have no problem. I have problems with certain people that in the way that they practice Islam, but in general, you can be a Muslim. I don't care. Fine, no problem. I don't want to go in. I'm basically at a bathroom at this point at a restaurant, and where I'm about to wash my hands after I took a piss, there's some dude with his fucking feet in the sink. Oh, but that's their cultural practice. Then I don't want that culture here. How about that? I felt like being like, hey man, here's $15. Go fucking order a shower here. Just so I could wash my hands in peace. And then you're going through that thread. Like, here's some other messages that people were showing that they've seen. Here's a truck stop. If you use bottles of water to bathe, please be courteous to other guests and clean up after yourselves. Then you notice the little needle disposal there. And I listen. I know that I'll be accused of being a racist. It has nothing to do with race. There are shit that culturally I don't want imported. Washing your feet at the sink of a bathroom for a restaurant is one of those things. I'm not saying that you can't have a conversation in the restroom, you can't be on the phone. But going in and having 4 people just like yelling while you're trying to take a piss at a urinal, standing around, like it's just weird. It's not the end of the world, but it's those sorts of things. It's like, I want a high trust, civilized fucking society. When you're in public, when you're in a public restroom, there's like, it's kind of like a quiet, hey, how you doing? Yeah, quiet thing. I'm sorry. Fuck it. That's how I feel. We have all these regulations, burdensome regulations that we're putting on truck drivers. And then at the same time, it's like, oh, but there's not enough truck drivers, in part because of the burdensome regulations. And so we need to basically import people that barely speak the language, and we'll just let them get away with carte blanche. How infuriating would that be if you're a driver? Imagine that DOT pulls you over and actually your truck's 6 inches too long. Sorry, we're gonna have to give you a hefty fine. And as you're sitting there pulled over in DOT, you see fucking people pulling by in like jalopy trucks that you're like, how's this thing even on the road? With drivers that don't know what they're fucking doing with their feet on the dash, watching fucking DVDs. They get a pass. And you wouldn't believe the stories that like my father-in-law and these other truck drivers tell me. They're like, you wouldn't believe the wrecks. Because these drivers don't know what the fuck they're doing. Yeah, Rage House says the regulations go well beyond safety. I was reading a thread the other day about sort of person saying they were talking to people, excuse me, at the FBI, and they were talking about how the standards had been lowered so much in recent years in an effort to get a more diverse group of people at the FBI. And it's like, it's a joke. The standards are a joke. That's what it looks like in the truck driving industry. On one hand, If you're a truck driver that's been doing it for years, you got to make sure every T is crossed, every I is dotted. They'll nail you for the simplest things. But then they'll leave in people that can't speak English. But Rob, just because you can't speak English doesn't mean that you can't recognize certain road signs. True. So you might know what a stop sign is, even if you can't read the letter stop. But are you going to know what it says if it says, warning, lane shift one, wreck up ahead, reduce to one lane, detour, get off here? Are you going to know what that says? This idea of inclusivity to the point where it's like we have people driving some of the most dangerous vehicles on the road that can't speak the fucking language because we have to do it so we feel inclusive. I think the chaos at the border is intentional from the NGOs. Crisco's a bit of an immigration scam expert. Canadian. It's just surreal. And then let's go back to the truck boycott, the truck protest in Canada for a second, right? One of the things I said during that was, you know, truck drivers will never be more powerful than they are right now for two reasons. One, it's because there's so little of them that are good. It's amazing to me. Like, I know these drivers, they're working till they're like 60, 70. Oh, by the way, you have to be able to pass a physical. So, like, you can't have high blood pressure. Your blood sugar has to be under control. You have to pass, like, I think it's a yearly physical, at least here in Pennsylvania. Ben for $5 says, bro, why aren't they hiring enough blind truck drivers? Not inclusive. True. Absolutely. But one of the things that they tell me all the time is like, Rob, we can't get young people. We can't. And I hear this in all sorts of industries. Again, building the modular homes is big business around here. They can't get young people. They can't. They try to offer more and more incentives, more and more bonuses for new people to come on. They can't get people. Truck driving, it's brutal. Maybe some small part of it's the regulations, but I think a lot of it is people don't want to do it. It's hard work. I don't want to do it. But it used to be sometimes people had to do jobs that was hard because they're necessary. Now, there's a lot of other options. I'll just live off disability. I'll live off my government benefits. I'll go to college for my African tribal dance degree and then get pissed off when I can't find a job in that. Nancy Detective says, I don't know, maybe because all young people were told those low-skilled jobs mean you're an underclass. It's not even low skill, by the way, being a truck driver, but I understand what you mean. But yeah, Mike Rowe talks about this all the time. We've told generations, multiple generations of young people that working with your hands and blue-collar work is gross and undesirable. Now we find ourselves in a position where the same people that told us that say, we have to import people that don't speak the language or have our culture to do these jobs because Americans are unwilling to do them. Oh, and by the way, then those companies that are hiring the truck drivers, they could pay peanuts. They'd have to pay an American driver much more money, but now they could pay next to nothing because they're importing people that'll be desperate for those sorts of jobs. Amphetamine Smoker says it's more about the lifestyle. Over the road trucking sucks. Starting off, it pays absolute shit for the first 2-3 years, unhealthy as fuck, away from your family for extended period of times, etc. Oh, I don't disagree. That's what when I say, in the reasons you say and other reasons, it's a very tough job. But the same of it was true in the 70s, and people did it. Why? Now it pays even more like shit because you could just import cheap labor from outside the country. But anyways, the influence of truck drivers, their potential sort of bargaining power will never be higher than it is right now in the United States. We're going to start to see more shipping done with less drivers because of increasing technology. What you saw in Canada is the same is true of the United States. An utter contempt for blue-collar workers. If the pandemic didn't show you that, I don't know what else will. You're non-essential. Okay, if you do a job that the comfortable elites need you to continue so they can continue to be comfortable, I guess we'll begrudgingly let you go to work. But the rest of you plebes, you're non-essential. We don't need you. We don't need you at all. Hey, Minarmi, are you the alt of Minar? Look at this. This is funny. I just noticed this. Minarmi says, Rob, you need to watch Minar destroy IRI in a debate. IRI got schooled. That's probably true. But it's funny your name's Minarmi. Almost like you're an alt of Minar and you're going on people's videos saying, check out this video of me destroying IRI. No, I don't think self-driving trucks will become as popular as people are suggesting. The amphetamines, like talk to old school truck drivers, they're all popping pills, smoking dope, driving for 3 days straight, no sleep. I don't disagree, probably true. I've heard that my name is No in Australian. Nar. But you saw how those truckers at the truckers' protests were treated like shit. The truth is, they're going to be treated like shit more and more and more as the necessity for them becomes less and less important. If all truck drivers came together right now and was like, you know what, we're done. We're just going to take a little 1-month holiday. This country would grind to a halt. For all the contempt that the elites treat people like that, their comfortable life's only possible because of these people that are truck drivers. And the same is true of a lot of blue-collar workers that our culture kind of treats like, I see this all the time, like, oh, these deep red states, look at how low they rank in education. Well, number one in education, according to last year's Florida, which is now a deep red state, thank you very much. But the contempt, oh, you're not that educated. Don't for a second conflate education with intelligence. When they say you're not that educated, they mean you didn't go to our universities to be indoctrinated. You didn't. Says the people that have to fucking call and beg someone to put a tire on their car when it blows on the side of the road. The Heller Trust says, Rob, there's not an episode of Live and Learn, Hutch and Fiska's podcast, where they don't complain or whine about you. Rob derangement syndrome. I'll let them. They need the content. Don't bother me. How well do they do when they call in and talk to me? Not very good. there was this mentality. And you have to understand, I operate in a unique sphere where all of the shit I'm saying, like these blue collar works, I'm shit at. I don't do it. But those are my life. Those are the people that I deal with every day. Those are the people I respect the most. Pretty much everyone. I'm like the only person I know that has a grad degree. Everyone in my community are people working with their fucking hands. Welders, truck drivers, bartenders, carpenters, different types of construction, law enforcement, farmers. So I grow up in that world. I see that world. I did some of that work, albeit poorly. I worked on a farm, a hobby farm and shit. I was bad at it, but I did, you know. My job's not blue collar work, but it's sort of thankless work that pays dog shit, where I'm putting in 80 to 90 hours a week working with adults with disabilities. Is OnlyFans considered white collar or blue collar or no collar? I don't know. Some of them may wear collars in some of their videos. I don't know. And I did debate, which was the left of the left, you know. And I remember a lot of, the people I was acquaintances with or friends from that world, the sort of academic world. They used to say, they were they might not have used the term, but they were of the learn to code. Oh, you got a bunch of friends that work in fracking and work on oil wells? Well, that's bad for the environment. They should get into green energy. That's what they should do. What are they doing? Well, too bad for them. Hey, people that used to make horse and buggies, they went out of business because the automobile technology moves on. What can you do? Their jobs aren't important anymore. Technology's replacing it. I had a lot of friends. There were artists that would say stuff like that. Now you know what the irony is, right? I'm a really bad artist. And so, like, if I wanted to come up with a drawing or something for a thumbnail for this particular video, I'd be in a lot of trouble. One second. So the artists have a point there. A lot of these welders, truck drivers and shit, well, when they need good art, to promote their business or whatever, they're screwed. What are they going to do? It took me about a minute. Boy, they were real smug when it was, we'll have self-driving cars. We won't need truck drivers. Well, all of your friends that are farmers, guess what? Technology will mean that we don't need as many people working in the fields. Remember the writers' strike in Hollywood? And they were like, we demand stop using AI. That's a shame. Learn to code, huh? right? The truth is, I feel bad for the writers and the artists too. I do. I feel bad that AI will do stuff. Just like I feel bad for the truck driver that may eventually be replaced by Amazon delivery drones. I do. I feel bad for all of that. But there's certainly positivity in an increase in technology. For example, access to AI art will make it much more affordable for people who are trying to create things that needed art. Imagine that you're a team of 2 or 3 people that's trying to make a video game. And formerly you would have had to hire a bunch of voice actors or a bunch of artists to do certain things, etc. And now AI makes that much more affordable and you're able to do it. Is that a bad thing? Well, Nescient Detective, he makes a solid point. I'll say this: if we don't have enough right-wing college-educated people, we'll never have enough cultural power to change anything. That's the point. Now, again, I know we're branching out from just truck drivers, but it's difficult to talk about this. I think about this a lot. I'm not the most handsome of men. I grew up in this small town. There's sort of a drug problem in the town. It's a rural community. It's overwhelmingly a white community. There's a lot of problem with painkillers, a lot of booze problems, weed problems, uppers. You go through like Walmart in the town. In fact, the town I grew up in doesn't have a Walmart. You have to drive 20 minutes to get to a Walmart. But if you go to a store in that town or you go to a Walmart or whatever, well, let's get to Lord of the Nerds first for $5. Says the machine god will be appealed to for labor, science, art, and eventually even morality itself. It doesn't need to be perfect, just better than us, right? You go through and it's just like stay that beauty standards matter more for women or whatever. Or maybe you could just say I'm a bigot, and as a guy, I'm not really evaluating the attractiveness as men as much as I would women. You go through my town and you look at people and how attractive they are on average compared to like LA or some city. And it's not close. And a lot of it's just not, oh, you were born that way. A lot of that's people were maybe more overweight. People were more, maybe you got a little more meth mouth. Maybe you, even if not that, it's not drugs. Maybe you just don't have the spare time nor the money to keep up cosmetically. Maybe you're doing harder jobs that break your body down more than people that are wealthier. I see people, my crew of people, my friends and family. I'm not saying there aren't physically fit people, but there are people that aren't, myself included. And you see people that, and I don't use this word begrudgingly, you see like white trash. And you see the guy that's like, dude, what are you doing? You're like at the bar 4 days a week. What the fuck are you doing, man? It's weird. It's weird to think about that. It's weird to say, I could see how if you were outside of this, you would look at it and you would say, huh, these people need to do better. Similarly, people in my area might look at like inner city Detroit and like some, neighborhood that's ravaged with gang violence and say, these people need to do better. Yeah, I guess. But when you're living it, you sort of understand it a little. It's not that it's an excuse. oh, well, you can't help it. You had to get addicted to painkillers because of where you grew up. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying when you're living there, you can see it. And it's true. I had people say, hey, man, you got to get out of that area. You have to. It's not that you can't be successful in that area, but it's way harder. But that's still the people I love. That's my people. That's who they are. It's who I am. For me, a good life lived is a life that gets you to heaven. It's a life lived in a positive way in the eyes of God and in the eyes of Jesus Christ. It's a life where you had a family that loved you and you enjoyed them. You had a community that loved you. You had friends. When you die, it's when people say, you know, that guy was a great guy. He was awesome. He always helped people out. He always brought a smile to people's face. That's it. That's what a good life is to me. A good life is when I die that my family will say, he was a good husband. He was a good father. That's my life. That's what I want my life to be. That's what I would say is a good life. Not, well, he created, this technology that benefited people. Ben for $10 says, I hate the pretentiousness of guys. AI can't do that yet. As if yet isn't the key word. Like, congrats, predicted it took AI 5 years to take your job instead of 1. Yeah. But we could each say, maybe you're like, no, a successful life's a life that lives to a ripe old age and that was healthy and that you traveled a lot and you saw the world and you created a bunch of jobs for people. And I'm not saying that those aren't positive lives and those aren't good things. But I look at the people around here that would be looked down upon by most of higher society. And then I look at like sort of the things that they value. I bartended. I would see people every week. I bartended on Sundays. Rural Pennsylvania, about an hour and 45 minutes northeast of Pittsburgh. It's September. It's Sunday. What's everyone in this town doing? Anyone know? About an hour, 45 minutes in a rural town northeast of Pittsburgh. Sunday, September. What's 80% of the people doing? Anyone have an idea? Church is one thing. We're not talking about church. Other than church, what's going on a Sunday in September? Rural Pennsylvania. See if anyone could get this. Yeah. Yeah, Brock gets it. You're watching the Steelers. You're watching football. Well, you're eating too. Well, that's every day. You're watching football. That's what you're doing. I would bartend. There were dudes that would come into the bar where I worked at. These guys are making like $13 an hour. They're like roofers. They're in their 50s. They can't even walk upright because their back's so fucked up. They're pissing all their money away on booze or weed or whatever. They live in some fucking shitty trailer that they're paying $400 a month rent for. They're probably divorced. You know what they want to do? They just want to sit there and drink a beer and watch the Steeler game. And they're doing things like, we saved up money. We're going to 2 Steeler games this year. Check out my new jersey I got. It cost me $80. I got this new Ben Roethlisberger jersey. Now, you could say, this is fucking stupid. See, it's bread and circuses. See, if they just self-improved their life, or if they were focused on politics and shit instead of the next bullshit entertainment thing, then their lives would be much better. And yeah, you're right. But that's their life, and they're happy with it. You could look at it from the outside and say, well, shit, they're doing jobs that are important, and they're only getting paid $12 an hour? That's fucking horseshit. That's not fair. What a raw deal. And yeah, you're right. but they're happy. They just want their mindless bullshit. That's what they want. I just want to watch the game. I work fucking 50 hours a week, up on a roof, hurting my back. I make shit money. I want to go to the bar and have some beers with my coworkers after work. I want to watch the fucking Steeler game or whatever town you're in, football game. That's who these people are. And then they have to suffer the indignity of the very thing that they're into, watching football, being treated like shit from that very industry. They're working for $13 an hour to buy the jersey of some guy who's making fucking $15 million a year. And then they got to watch that guy go, this country is racist. It's systemically racist. We're going to kneel for the national anthem. Many of these guys are veterans. They went and fucking served. Now they got to have people say, this country's shit. It's shit. Imagine that. They're okay with the way that the world is falling out. That the guy that's catching the ball is making $15 million a year, and they're working 50 hours a week up on some fucking roof, carrying heavy shingles up a fucking ladder with their back that could barely fucking operate anymore. And they are like, that's the deal, and that's okay. That's fine. But that's not enough. That's not enough. Lord of the Nerds for $5 says, Rob is currently speaking to failed predictions of the Marxist communists. The proletariat generally is conservative and simply wants to chill. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And it's not just sports. I did a bit the other day about the new Assassin's Creed. And I think that people are going too far. For me, it's like, is the game fun or not? But I get it. It's the same sort of overall mentality. It's like, I just don't want this shit shoveled down my throat. That's it. How many fucking young guys go out and work some bullshit job and the dating market's failed for them and they, the world's been telling them that they're the problem, they're a piece of shit their entire lives. And they go home and they just want to put in a fucking video game and kill some fucking zombies or slash up some people as a fucking assassin or some shit. And there it is again. The same fucking message. Lord of the Nerds for $5 says, this is why dictatorship of the proletariat will never happen. Yeah. Now, as overall, I don't give a shit. If the Assassin's Creed game's fun, it's fun. Maybe I'll be honest, I ain't going to play it even if it is fun because I don't play games that much anymore. Brock says the game's awesome. Okay. But I understand where the pushback comes from. And by the way, it'll be effective. If the new Assassin's Creed game's awesome and it does shit and sells because so many people that otherwise would have liked it's like, we don't like that there's a gay black samurai in it. From an objective standpoint, I would say, well, who really gives a shit about that if the game's fun? But if Ubisoft goes under because this was a AAA game that does absolute dog shit, the next AAA studio might go, you know what? Let's have a white male heterosexual protagonist. For why don't we just leave sexuality out of it? How about there's no romance options? You're just a fucking dude killing people and it never comes up. Look at Ubisoft stock, Rob, screen share. I don't know. I don't have to look it up. And you're hearing conflicting reports. You always hear this. It's the same with the Disney Plus with like the Acolyte. Remember they were like, oh, strongest opening weekend for the Acolyte, of any Disney Plus stream show or any Star Wars show on Disney Plus. And then it was like, yeah, but it's a 4-day weekend instead of 2. They're counting 4 days. And then, there's a bunch of shit. And if it was the whole time while that show was going on, the Acolyte, and people were like, this is woke garbage. It's bullshit. Disney was saying, no, the show's doing great. It's fucking awesome. The numbers are great. It's fantastic. And they're manipulating the numbers in such a way. But if the show was doing so great, why'd they fucking cancel it? Lord of the Nerds again for $5 says last one. Last one. You got at least 100 more bucks to stand. No, I'm just kidding. This is what led to the creation of fascism, which is designed to force the proletariat into political activists in all facets of life. But getting back to truckers and sort of blue collar work, it's fucking brutal work. It's brutal. It's thankless. And the indignities that you're forced to put up with on top of it for people that want to get into it. We ought to be saying thank you and taking these people seriously. And when they're telling you, like, yeah, it's a fucking joke that we go into truck stops and we have people that don't speak the language that are fucking basically bathing in the sink where I'm just trying to take a piss and wash my hands is a fucking joke. And instead, the way our society, the people that control the narrative treat them is, that's racism. That's racist. Fuck you. 10 out of 10 times, I'd rather fucking be doing every activity I can imagine with that fucking truck driver rather than you, Mr. fucking politician, Mr. fucking academic. Yeah, but look how more successful that wealthy person is, that academic person. They're living life the right way. They're going to live longer. Their body's not breaking down, and they could go on all these cool vacations, and they have all this shit and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, fuck it. I don't care. I'm tired of treating that our society treats these people like shit that are the backbone for how our country operates. And I don't give a fuck what their skin color is. You're some black guy, you're some Hispanic guy out there truck driving, doing the right thing, busting your ass. God bless you. I don't care. But culture matters. And being able to do simple things like reading the fucking language when you're driving a truck that has the ability to kill people on the road seems to be an important thing if we're going to put all these other regulations out there. Lord of the Nerds for $2 says this is why fascism's inherently left-leaning. I don't disagree. Kurtz Corner says, I mean, honestly, as a tradesman, driving a truck ain't that hard. That's why foreigners do it. Well, it depends on what you mean by hard. Driving a truck that's owned by a company, and as soon as any random thing happens to it, you just pull off the side of the road and call in on broken English for someone to go repair it. I guess that's not hard. Is it hard being away from your family fucking 5 days a week? Being over the road? Well, you don't have to be a long haul trucker. Of course not. But that's like saying being a carpenter is not that hard. But there are certain forms of carpentry that are far more skilled. The truckers I know, most of them drive oversized loads. Far more difficult than just being a truck driver that drives them home every night. And there certainly are a lot of long haul truckers that are the people that we're talking about that can't speak the language. I just dribbled water on myself. No, I agree. There's levels. Of course. That's true of any. Exactly. For example, I think welding at the base level is difficult as someone who's not a welder, but I'm sure there's rudimentary welding, like spot welding or something that's you could teach even a meathead like me, but then there's levels to it. I knew a guy who went to school to be an underwater welder. That looks difficult as fucking shit and dangerous as it's crazy. But to be like, you wouldn't say, well, that's not skilled because you could pretty much teach anyone how to weld. Well, yeah. I mean, similarly, you could teach anyone how to paint, but to be like a high-level artist, right? You say backing up a truck's easy. I knew a guy who was a truck driver, and a lot of times what you'll do is you'll haul to a factory, right? So I think this guy delivered bottles, and there was a factory that he would go to pretty much every day. He'd make the same route. And one of the things he would do is he would sit there, and so many of these other truck drivers would pay him to back their trucks into the dock because they couldn't do it. So they'd pay him like $50 to hop in the truck, 5 minutes, get it straightened up, back it into the dock, $50. He'd do that, like 4 or 5 drivers would pay him, like every day. He's making like $200 because drivers that you would think, well, part of the job would be knowing how to back this truck into the dock, right? They can't do it. And my buddy, you know, he's like a little younger than me. He's making bank. He's like, shit, I could quit my job and just come show up in my car eating a sandwich and fucking back these dudes' trucks in. They're not all foreigners, by the way. There were a lot of people that were just like, you know, maybe they could have did it, but it would take them 5 or 6 tries and it's just stressful. And it's like, hey man, here's $50. Fuck it. I'm going to go get a bite to eat. Average debate enjoyer. I talked to Grid yesterday, and he said if Andrew Wilson can't moderate this debate Wednesday, he asked if I would do it, which I told him that's fine, that you and Grid are going to be having. I will be fair about it. But we'll see. Hopefully, for you all's sakes, Andrew Wilson is able to do it. I think it'll get you more eyeballs. But good luck with that debate. I think it'll be a good one. Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic too, so I think it'll be an interesting debate. Drew the Dogman, thanks for membership. 5 months. Cheers, Roberto. Thank you, man. Yeah, I'm not a great driver. I don't know how you would determine whether or not I'm a great driver. I would say that I'm an overly safe driver. I've never had a ticket. My wife always picks on me because I'm always driving the speed limit pretty much. I remember one time I got pulled over for a warning, and I had to call my father-in-law. I'm like, you're not going to believe this. I got pulled over for a warning for speeding. He's like, what? No fucking way. Because they always pick on me that I'm slower than all of them. But I've only had one wreck, and that was completely not my fault. Well, that's not true. When I had my permit, I was going down a dirt road and went too fast around a turn and slid into a wire fence. That's when I was 16. But other than that, I've only ever had one wreck. And it was while I was working. This is a funny story, so I'll tell it. I was working not at the company I'm at now, but the same type of job with an adult with disabilities. And this person had a little more social skills. They were very verbal. And to meet them, you might say, oh, I could tell this person has a disability. But they had a full-time job. They worked at Goodwill, worked 40 hours a week, had a girlfriend. This particular day, I was driving them to see their girlfriend. So if you can imagine, we're going through this town. It's sort of like a small, medium-sized town. And I don't know how I could do that. I have paper I could draw, but just imagine, like, this is the road, and then it's literally a 90-degree turn. But it's still the main road. And then maybe 20 feet after this turn in this town, there's a stoplight. So if there's enough cars backed up, the cars back up and they're going sort of around the turn. Now, if the turn is going like this and then turning, if you just go straight, all of a sudden there's an alley. Everybody get what I'm saying? So I'm approaching this turn and the stoplight's there, and I get stuck right in the corner of this turn on this main highway because there's enough traffic stopped. So now to the right of me, I can see this alley. And there's a young girl, and she's on the phone. And she's like this. And she just starts driving. And I'm literally stopped in traffic, cars in front and behind me. And I start laying on the horn. I beep like 6 times. And she literally, bam, slams right into the side of my van. Just bam. Like, I couldn't move forward or backwards. There's a car in front and behind me, and I'm not moving at all. So and I saw what was happening. She was on the phone. She wasn't paying attention. She drove right into me. So, it was pretty traumatic for the gentleman that I'm working with disabilities. He's sort of freaking out a little. So I put the car in park and I get out of the car and I get him out of the car, make sure we're all right. And I was like, hey, sit here for a second. I want to go check on this girl. And I go up and I'm like, are you all right? And she starts flipping shit on me. Fuck you. Where's my phone? Blah, 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 blah. And screaming. And now there's like a crowd because there are people walking down the sidewalk, like with shops on the street. Plus people behind me are getting out of their cars because it was pretty significant. I mean, she's probably only going like 5-10 mile an hour, but it's a wreck that you could hear. It totaled the van, and all of a sudden, like, this girl's screaming at me and all these people are surrounding me and they're looking at me like, what the fuck did you do to this lady, this poor young girl? And this woman who was in the vehicle directly behind me, she gets out of the car and her hand's wrapped in a white towel and it's bleeding. She cut herself cooking dinner, I later found out, and she was on the way to the hospital. And thank God she was there because she starts like yelling. She's like, he didn't do anything. That stupid bitch was on her phone and ran right into the side of his car. So I didn't have to say anything. I'm just like, okay, And so now this woman's yelling at this girl because she saw that the girl ran right into the car. So she's yelling at her. And so I'm like, I got to get over here with my guy, that I'm working with. And so I go over and I'm like, hey, man, you okay? And we obviously had to wait for the police to come and stuff. And so I slightly moved my car off the side of the road so traffic could go. The woman with the towel agreed to stay behind to talk to the police officers. It only took the police like 2 minutes to get there. And so the police talked to the girl first, and I'm talking to my guy, and I'll never forget this. It's one of the fun, like, you had to know the guy I'm working with for this to really be funny, but I thought it was epic. Like, and he's sort of worked up. I'm like, you all right, man? He's like, yeah, I'm all right. Can we still go visit my girlfriend? I'm like, yeah, I promise we'll get there, man. We'll see what we got to do, And like, I'm talking to him, and that's just sort of the conversation. And then the cop talks to the girl first, and then he comes and he talks to us, and he could see the situation right out of the gate that I'm with someone with a disability. And he's like, are you guys all right? Do you need medical attention? And I'm like, no, I think we're fine. How about you? And I say to my client, and I'll never forget this. He goes, I think I'm supposed to say my back hurts so I get a bunch of money. That cop laughed his ass off. He's like, no, you're not. He's like, if your back actually hurts, that's one thing, but you're not supposed to say it just to get a bunch of money. I was so proud of my man, though. I'm like, yeah, you fucking nailed it, man. That's how you do it. Yeah, fuck this lady. But then, after we stopped laughing and stuff, the cop's like, what happened? And I was like, yeah, I was literally stuck in traffic and I beeped like 5 times and I saw the girl was on her phone and she just rammed right into the side of me. She wasn't paying attention. She was on her phone. And the cop's like, yeah, I believe that because she's refusing to talk to me until she finds her phone. When the wreck happened, it smashed her car up and the phone flew out of her hand. And now she's like on the floorboards looking for the phone. And so he's like, she won't talk to me until she calls her mom. And then, of course, later found out that the story was she didn't have insurance. So, yay, but anyways, that's the only wreck I've ever been in. But I'm not a good driver. I could not drive a truck. I would be shit at it. Thanks, Saiga. I appreciate it, man. Rob GPT all the way. But yeah, that's the only wreck I've ever been in as a driver. I've been in some wrecks as a passenger. She was not black. She was where I live. Probably 95% of people are white. She was white. And now I do say shit. What that would have been? My goodness, that would have been 18, 19 years ago. And the residual impact from that wreck now, 18 years later, caused my back to hurt. Her age, I would guess she was 17. I can't remember, but she was definitely young. Probably a high school girl. But yeah, I get you, Tone Dogs. It's all right. I'm just, but yeah, I mean, no insurance. Yeah, what can you do? But you guys want to get real? Let's do it. You know what? we'll do this. This will be the last part of the stream. Let's do it. Let's get in some racial trouble, shall we? Let's do it. Where's the fucking JQ people? Where are they that are always demanding I talk about race realism and race IQ? Here we go. You ready? Clip it. Let's go. Everybody clip it. Let's get Rob in trouble for being a racist. How about it? All right, here we go. I live in this small town that's got a state college, Clarion University. Well, I don't live there. I live outside of Clarion, right? But Clarion University, I went small state school. So here we go. Clarion, like most universities, they want to sell themselves, like all universities, right? So what are some things that you think that a university today would want to tout about themselves? You would think, well, how good their education is. They're ranked third in the state for their economics department. Or great things that their alumnus have went on. We had someone come out of our biology department that worked for, John Hopkins Medical University and developed that. Crisco nails it. But what about diversity? That's what you want to tout. That's the important shit, right? That's what you want. Diversity. And Clarion University is no different. But here's the problem. If you're a black student in, let's say, the state of Pennsylvania, though anywhere, you're really good, you're top of your class, you go into Clarion University? The truth is, if you are black and have a 3.9 GPA in high school, and you're in the top 10% of your class, a white student or an Asian student that has that exact same resume is going to have less options of getting into a university as you. And this isn't racist to talk about. This has been shown to be true. There have been lawsuits that have shown this. Particularly when it comes to Ivy League, but it matriculates down. So if you, for example, you've all seen the studies that show like the Ivy League universities, if you have like a 1,400 on your SATs and you're white, they only take like 1% of the people that apply with that. But if you're black, they'll take like 25%. But here's the thing. That matriculates down. So then the next desirable schools, maybe not Ivy League, but top tier like Division I schools, now they're taking people that maybe if you have a 1,200 on your SAT and white, you have no shot to get in. But if you're black, now you have a good shot to get in. But what happens when you get to the bottom of the barrel? Then what? What about like the schools that are the most, we'll take anyone? I mean, I could have got into Clarion University with a GED. So who are they willing to take? Well, they're willing to take almost anyone regardless of their skin color. There's very low metrics. But they want to be able to tout diversity as well. But if you're black and you're a damn good high school student, maybe not top tier, would you rather go to Clarion University, which none of you have ever heard of? Or would you rather go to Penn State or Pitt or Temple? Which one would you choose? I know what I would choose. If you're going from just what degree do you want at the end of the day? Because let's be honest, that's why you're picking to go to a college anyways. Yeah, I guess there's maybe still a handful of people that are picking for an education, but basically it's a diploma mill. You just, hey, I'm going to spend 4 years partying and then give me a fucking piece of paper that says that I can go get a good job. Let's do it. Well, when you're applying for employment and you have your Clarion University degree, that's far less helpful than you have your Penn State or Pitt University degree. Right? Now, Clarion, when you factor out college students or people that work at the university, my guess is Clarion would be very similar demographically to almost all of the towns around the area, which would be, I'm just spitballing here, 90 to 95% white. People of European ancestry. That'd be my guess. The people of color that live in the area, whether it be immigrants that have come from like India or other places, or black Americans, they tend to basically culturally have almost the exact same, like hardworking, sort of conservative, rural people. Hey, did you catch that game? Cool as shit. No problem. There are a ton of black students. They're fucking great. No problem. I debated black people that beat the shit out of me, that were objectively smarter than me. You know? Now, here's where I'm going to get in trouble, though. I don't care. I'll say it. A lot of the black students that come to Clarion University, they shouldn't be in college. They shouldn't. Clarion is desperate to get their diversity numbers up, so they'll take them. And so you'll sit in classes and you're just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, people that could barely read. And you're like, and then unfortunately, what happens is it helps drive up racial stereotypes, because you're not getting an accurate representation of the average black student or black person. Those people, because of DEI, have all gotten to go to schools that maybe, like, let me put it this way. This is a gross oversimplification, but let me try to draw you a little chart to explain what I'm talking about. Here's a chart, right? Tiers. See, these are all different tiers. Tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can imagine the tiers just going down. You have whites and blacks. In a system without DEI, you would generally have the tier 1 blacks, tier 1 whites, tier 1 Hispanics, tier 1 Asians. They would all be going to the tier 1 universities. Tier 2, same thing. Tier 3, same thing. But what happens is, the universities are like, well, we're going to break this white tier in half, and only the top people in tier 1 get into the Ivy League schools, but we'll take down to tier 3 for people that are minorities. Then the tier 2 schools are like, well, we'll take these tier 1s that didn't make it in of whites, but now we'll take tier 4 of blacks. And then the tier 3 schools are like, well, now we got all the tier 2 whites. We can get them. But we're down to tier 5 when it comes to blacks. Oh, what's up? I'm getting rated right now. The audio cut out? Check. Yeah. No, I think... Can someone other than Galil let me know? Okay. Galil, it's you, man. It's not me. I think my audio is still going. That's what happens. And then the unintended consequences of that is, so someone who's not looking into it that much, they go to a school like I went to, Clarion University, where it's like, okay, well, I'm down here. I'm at the tier 5 school, as low as it gets, right? I'm fucking some redneck who, I was like, I think in my graduating class, I think there were like 90 something people in high school. I was 72 out of 90 for my GPA. My SAT was number 1 in my graduating class, but my grades were 72 because I was a lazy sack of shit who never did my homework or anything. So my grades sucked. Right? Insane Wheels, thank you so much for the raid, man. I really appreciate it. So you go to school, and all of a sudden, there's these black students here that it's like, okay, I'm in. I remember I took this, I'll never forget this. I took this fucking I don't even know what it would be considered. It was like this entry level, like, computer class. I don't know shit about computers. And the professor said, he's explaining to us like binary. And he's like, each key on the keyboard is basically an on off switch. And so if you just have a code that's one key, and we just have, you click the key and it's on, and you let the key go and it's off. 1, 0. And I'll never forget this. I was third in the row, and it was 2 people in front of me who happened to both be black. And he said, for example, how many letters of the alphabet are there? Here's a keyboard. You can see all the letters of the alphabet on there. Okay. How many letters of the alphabet are there? Points to the girl in the front. She's like, 16? And he's like, no. And then he goes to the next, and they're like 50 something. And he's like, no. And then he points to me, and I'm like, 26. And you can see he's just like, yeah. Now, the people in that class are getting the impression, oh, it must be that black people are dumber. But no, that's not what's happening. What's happening is DEI is forced a situation where, because the top tier universities are taking not just the top tier minorities, but they're taking tiers below that, that matriculates down to the point where you're getting to the bottom schools, and you have people that don't know like how to read. And you're trying to teach a class of people, and there's a healthy portion of the class size that's like, you have to dumb it down for them. I'm not joking at all. And so then you're doing a disservice to those black students that are in the class, that it's like, hey, you're kind of wasting your time here because it's just not for you. And by the way, if you're fucking not school smart, the whole first half of the show was talking about blue collar workers. I know fucking some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life didn't pass 9th grade, but they could tear your fucking engine apart like that. I'm not making any judgment as far as like, hey, you're not book smart, you're not good enough to be at college. But the idea of university is it wasn't supposed to be for everyone. I'm a reasonably intelligent person. I'll tell you right now, there are universities that if they were operating the way they were in the 70s, there is no fucking chance that I would be capable of being at that university. I'm just not book smart enough. I'm just not. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that I'm not an intelligent person that can't have insightful views. It's not me. I ain't going to John Hopkins. Like, I couldn't do it. But if John Hopkins was forced to dumb itself down for me so that I could feel included, now everyone else suffers. So think of the other unintended consequences. So it's a disservice to those students. It's a disservice to all the other students that now have to have their time in education be sort of regressed to the mean. It's unfair to the students that happen to be in the groups that are receiving DEI, but are actually very fucking talented and very smart, because now people look at them, oh, you're a black doctor. Is that because you're good enough to be a doctor, or is that because you're black? And so they just gave you a degree. That's not fair to that black doctor that's actually like, yeah, I'm one of the best surgeons in the world. But now they're looked at. All of this is unintended consequences because of this DEI bullshit. And then you get people that are like, oh, in a town like mine, where the vast majority of the people that live in this county are white, and most people of color that you'll interact with go to this university, and they're people that probably shouldn't be at the university, and it's not just, here we go, I like to walk in a fine line here. I'm not saying this about all black people. I'm not saying that. But because of what I'm talking about, like this tier, a lot of the people that come that happen to be people of color, they just want to fucking party. They don't even really give a shit. I'm not saying that that's not true of a lot of white people as well. But what you see is, I don't know how to put this any to soften the blow. There's a lot of legal troubles that tend to follow. And again, what we're talking about is this small state school I went to. They want to tout diversity. But because because the really good black students are all going to way better schools than this shitty school I went to. And so, but you still want those black students if you're the school so you can say, look how diverse we are. And so you bring in students that maybe didn't have the best grades, didn't have the best test scores. Maybe they had legal troubles in high school. And that's what the people in the town see. So you go out for dinner at the local bar. There's a big fight last week. Members of the football team, I'm hearing, allegedly stabbed a 17-year-old in the chest. Now, how common do you think stabbings are in our rural town? There was a person shot and murdered when I went to school in like 2004. There was another shooting where the guy didn't die a couple years later. Those sorts of things, unfortunately, disproportionately involve people of color that are students of color. Now, what's the impression that the town gets? Oh, see, people of color are more violent. People of color are more... No. You're getting a selection of people. Oh, it was a broken liquor bottle, not a knife. Then you have other problems. I can tell you some stories about that university. For example, I know people that are police officers. Let me give you some advice if you're a potential thief out there. In my town, the last place you want, well, I don't want to say that. There's probably two places. Here's probably the tier list of places that you don't want to rob, right? As far as stores. Number one, bars. Most bars. Why? Because most bars are going to be ran by rednecks that are armed. So you're pretty much taking your life into your hands. It's number one. Number two, banks, because of obvious reasons. Though there are humorous stories. I have a humorous bank. The town I grew up in that's like 20 minutes away, overwhelmingly a white town. The bank got robbed. And I'll never forget this. The police had the bank surrounded, basically, and the guy got away. The robber got away. They caught him like 3 days later in another town. And the newspaper article said he was an African-American gentleman with, quote, an obvious fake beard. And I'm thinking like basically there's very few black people in the town anyway. So the cops are showing up to the bank. They're like, okay, it's a black guy with a big like ZZ Top beard. This dude comes walking out of the bank and the cop's like, how you doing, sir? I don't know. I know it wasn't that, but it makes me laugh just thinking like, good for that guy, you know, his fake ZZ Top beard. Walking out the bank. Good shit for that guy. So, and it was nonviolent. So I tip my cap to that gentleman. I wish he'd have got away with it. It'd been a great movie. But you don't want to rob banks because, you know, then you're talking federal shit. But other than that, you know where you don't want to rob? Walmart. Because they have like a zero tolerance policy when it comes to robberies. And they have, like, when it comes to my town, the best cameras and shit. It's stupid. They got cameras in the parking lot, you know? And so if you rob Walmart, there's a good chance you'll get caught. Just throwing that out there. If you come to my Clarion County, Pennsylvania, don't rob Walmart. And they're fucking chomping at the bit, man, to arrest you. They ain't fucking around. So I know this cop locally, sort of, and he was like, "You wouldn't believe how many times we get called to the or to the Walmart because there's been some sort of like shoplifting or something like that, and Walmart's like gung ho to press charges." And because it'll be a person of color, whether maybe it's someone involved in the football team or it's just a student of color that's involved in organizations, the university will call the police and be like, "Hey, can you go easy on this person? It'll look bad." Now, do you think for a second when I was at the fucking university that if I shoplifted from Walmart, that someone at the university's making phone calls on my behalf? There ain't no fucking chance. None. And this person in law enforcement told me, like, look, we'll arrest the same person 3 or 4 times. There was one time they arrested a particular person who happened to be black like twice for shoplifting. The school intervened, got a slap on the wrist, and then the third arrest was for sexual assault. Now, this isn't a skin color issue. Like, oh, Rob's saying that black people weren't. No, I've already explained why I'm saying this isn't an adequate representation of color, people of color. But when you are like, oh, not only have we set up the DEI system to have this tier list that I've talked about, but now there will also be artificially lack of accountability for the people. What do you think happens? I'm not pro-segregation at all. Like, take skin color out of this for a second. If you have a famous athlete, let's say they're white, it doesn't matter, and they're in some town, where they play ball, they're a basketball player, we'll say, a white basketball player, there you go, and they stab someone, or they do something crazy. They get caught speeding going 110 mile an hour with cocaine on the dashboard, and the cops are like, "Hey, man, fuck it, I ain't gonna say nothing. Get the fuck out of here." What do you think the lesson taught to that person is? Oh, I can get away with this shit. I'm bigger than the law. If you're MAGA and you are anti-DEI, it means you don't want diversity, no equality, and no inclusion. What does the E stand for in DEI? Billy John, what does the E stand for? Can you tell me that? You said no equality. Is that what the E stands for? Can anyone tell me that? In DEI, what's the E stand for? Is it equality, is Billy John saying there? Oh, equity. Equity, says Billy John. Huh. So he said that I was pro-segregation and I was not for equality. But then he has to admit, oh, asterisk, equity. You're right. I'm not for equity. Equity is the opposite of equality. Equity means equal outcomes. Equality means equal opportunities. Yes, I'm absolutely fine with no equity. Equity is, by its very definition, discriminatory. How committed to equal outcomes are you, Billy John? A disproportionate of federal workers are black. Are you for firing them and hiring white workers to replace them so that we could have equal outcomes? Just curious. When it comes to a lot of very dirty jobs and dangerous jobs, overwhelmingly done by men, are you for firing those men and forcing women into those jobs so that we have equity? Or do you support equity in the way that it's traditionally done, that says, as long as it disadvantages white men, then we should prioritize it? But when there are areas where white men are disadvantaged, like, I don't know, pro sports, government jobs, etc., well, we don't give a fuck about equalizing those outcomes. Fuck that. How come prisons don't have equity? Why are there far more men incarcerated than women? Why aren't we trying to achieve that? Just curious. Women now are overwhelmingly getting degrees. Where's the equity? Shouldn't we force some of these women out of colleges and put men there? I mean, for equity, right? Notice he's not answering. Notice? You see? Conveniently ignoring now. You're against equality, equity, but equity's good, right? Yawn, Rob with the pseudo-academic arguments. What's pseudo? Hey, there's a lot of you in the chat earlier that were telling me you're truck drivers. Do you consider that an academic argument when I say, if 2/3 of the people graduating are women, doesn't that mean equity means should be 50% men, 50% women? That's an academic argument. I can't answer that. If 85% of the people incarcerated are men, wouldn't equity mean that we get those numbers about 50-50 men to women? That's an academic argument. I'm not going to answer that, yawn. Then he says, stop with the academic arguments, and then says, what was your question again? Yeah, I'll be down in a second, Courtney. Now, think of the things I said. I talked about how if the top schools are forced through DEI to take people that, like, they'll take, the Ivy League schools will take someone with a 1400 SAT that's black, but you have to have a 1550 if you're white or Asian. Then what that means is, let's say 10% of all black students have an SAT that's 1400 or above. The Ivy League schools would take all of them. But if 10% of white students, the exact same proportion, had a 1400 or above, only like 5% of them would be taken. So that means the next schools down, there's still this 95% of the white population with 1400 or higher SATs that could get into the next tier of school. But there's no black students left in that tier. So now, but you still want black students for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So you get down to the next tier. Well, we'll take black students that got at least a 1200, and we'll take white students that got 1400. Cool. Then you go down to the next tier of school. Well, we'll take white students that at least got a 1200, but the black students that got a 1200 are already gone. They're going to the better schools. So we'll take black students that got a 1000. Obviously, these are overgeneralized numbers. Billy John, define equity. Define equity. If my definition's incorrect, what's your definition? Go ahead. Define equity. And how is it different than equality? Equity is equal outcome. So what happens is when you get down to the lowest tiered school, like the one I went to, which is a cheap state school in Pennsylvania, there are tons and tons and tons. It's not fairness or justice in the way people are treated. If that's the definition of how equity is applied, then there wouldn't be anything like racial quotas, right? So, Billy John, if the definition of equity is fairness or justice in the way people are treated, then you would acknowledge that the requirements to get into a university, race shouldn't matter, correct? Yes or no? If it's just everyone's treated with fair justice, they're all treated equally, then if the criteria to get into Harvard is you have to have a 1550 SAT, that should be the same whether if you're white, black, male, female, Muslim, Christian, right? It should be the same. That's fair. That's justice, correct? Mr. Belay in the Department of Numismatics, for $5 says DI didn't earn it. DI, Donald ended it. Correct, Billy John? You would say, yes, that would be anti-equity. If there was a university that had different SAT? Nope. Why not, Billy John? So then we're not treating them equally. You see the game we're playing? You see the semantic game that we're playing? Oh no, equity just means treating people with fairness and justice, treating them equally. That's all it means. Oh, so then we should have the same requirements based on things like race, based on things like sex. No, we shouldn't do that. So can you explain to me then why it is equitable or fair and just for Harvard to be willing to accept black people with lower SATs than what the requirement is for white people? Can you explain to us why that's fair and just? Now, I can answer for him because I don't have all day. What he'll say is, what fairness and justice are, it depends because of historic racism and things like that. And so we have to make sure that there's the same treatment. That means because there's been bad treatment. There we go. Because in 1975, the U.S. acknowledged that it was necessary to make up for the effects of segregation. You see? Do you see? So then how will we judge when we've made up for those effects? How will we judge, Billy John? Segregation happened in 1975, and now we have to have different treatment for white and black people. So how will we know when those effects have been made up? How would you know if we're being equitable? How would you know if Harvard's being equitable? What are some of the things you would look at? How would I know? I'm saying that no, I disagree with that in the first place. That's not what equity is. I'm saying it's equality of outcomes. You tell me, how would you know? Or fuck, I'll answer your question. Well, the way we would know is we would look at the outcomes. We would look at how many black people are getting into Harvard. Why do I have to answer if segregation was bad? Yeah, in a lot of ways, segregation was bad. I'm not for it. And, okay. Now, how would you know? The reason they'll say they'll know is they'll say, well, we'll know when there are enough black people that are getting into Harvard. No, it's not the same that I know it was bad. Disparaging people and telling people that they can't go into public areas because of the way they are born with immutable characteristics is wrong. Because it is wrong to judge people or to withhold them public opportunities because of their skin color. That's why I'm for equality of opportunity. You should not have a public park that is able to be paid for by tax dollars where you say this park is for white people, this park is for black people. That is completely different than saying, therefore, we should have one set of requirement for black people and one set of requirement for white people. That is a completely different argument. You're for that. You're saying, no, I'm for that because of past discrimination. So I'm asking, then how would we know if you do that, whether or not it is equitable, it is fair and just? What are the things we'd look at? Now, you're too fucking stupid or too fucking bad faith to answer the question, so I'll answer it for you. Well, the way that we would know is we would see what the outcomes were, and we would say, well, if we lower the criteria for blacks to get into 1,400 for the SAT, and still there's only 1% of blacks, we would say that's not good enough. We need to bump up the number of blacks that are there. And so that might mean that we need to lower the requirements even more. This isn't just happening at Harvard. This is occurring in all places that embrace DEI. What they're looking for is the outcome at the end of the day. They'll say things like 30% of our workforce needs to be people of color. And so therefore, when we're doing the hiring process, the standards need to be lowered for people of color to ensure that we get enough people hired that we meet that 30% benchmark. In other words, equality of outcome. It is the outcome that matters. Because if it's not the outcome that matters and it's the opportunity that matters, then the fair and just thing would be to have the opportunity be the same for everyone. Anyways, I don't have time to argue with this moron all day. Okay, he says, okay. So the claim that I'm for segregation because I'm against DEI, or anyone that's against DEI is for segregation, is nonsense. For example, if I go to a hospital because I need emergency surgery, you know what I want in the person that's doing that surgery to me? I don't care if they're a white person, a black person, they're straight, they're gay, they're Muslim, they're Christian, they're Hindu, they're atheist, they're from fucking the United States, they're from Canada, they're from China. They like the sports team I like, or they hate the sports team. I want the person that's the best at the job. That's who I want. When I get on an airplane, I want a pilot who's a really good fucking pilot. I don't care what their skin color is. At my job, I want my coworkers to be good at their job and care about it. I don't give a fuck what their skin color is. What I don't want is to get people in that aren't good because we need to up our quotas of people in certain demographics. And oh, by the way, those demographics are always minority demographics and always to the disparagement of the groups that we consider to be the oppressors, which are white men, Christians, etc. I'm making my own definitions and standards. You could say that my definitions and standards are incorrect. There's a rich history to show that that's exactly how it plays out. But you're incapable of arguing based on your standard how then the practices that we see play out would be antithetical to what you're deeming equity. If equity just means treating everyone with fairness, then having different standards for different people isn't treating them fair. And if you say, no, that's because my definition of fairness is that we do treat people differently based on past historical abuses, etc., then what you've in effect done is given the rationale for equity is equality of outcomes. For example, let's take this to the logical extension. Billy John says, because of past historical treatment of black people, that's what justifies sort of lowering standards, etc., to ensure that there are more black people today because they're still suffering the effects of segregation. Okay, let's play this out to the logical extension. One of the things that happened during the previous administration was there was money given out to poor farmers, but much of this money was increased when it came to poor farmers that were people of color. So there was a specific program that said if you're a poor farmer of color, you have access to this government money. So let's run the clock out another 50 years, and let's say that there is a black farmer's family, and that farm has been doing very well because they were given a boost at this crucial time during COVID where they were able to survive that. But my family, their farm couldn't sustain because they were ineligible for that government money because they're white. So 50 years from now, their ancestors no longer have this farm, and the black family has purchased up that farm. Does that now mean that there have to be policies to give specific white people, because they were de facto discriminated against by the government, they have to give white people 50 years from now a leg up so that they could compete with now the black people that the government favored 50 years prior? And then if so, let's go another 50 years out, and does a black family get to say, but wait a minute, white people were given this special program 50 years ago. And so now my family was harmed by the fact that we weren't eligible for that special program, so we actually need a leg up. How far do we go? Yes, he says. Yes, Billy says. Do you see? So then the logical extension of what Billy said is we are perpetually favoring one skin color over another. Right now, white people were privileged in the 70s and blacks were harmed, so that means that the government benefits black people. 50 years from now, whites will be able to say 50 years ago the government disparaged white people and benefited black people, and so now the government needs to benefit us, so the government will benefit white people 50 years from now. 50 years after that, blacks will say, but 50 years ago, whites were benefited by the government and blacks were disparaged, and so now the government must benefit black people again. You see? But I'm being too academic for Billy John here. Anyways, real quick to finish up. So we had like this violence and shit that occurs in town. Another story I could tell you is there was this kid in a lot of classes I had. He was head of the Black Student Union. And he was the same major as me, and everything in every class was about race. Everything. It's like I remember one time we're sitting in this class, and I was friends with two black guys that were in this class with me. We were good friends. They were on the baseball team. And we were talking about, it was a digital media class, and we were talking about the power of film and these atrocities and things like that. And we were talking about Cambodia, and these pictures came up with these pyramids of skulls and like the visceral reaction. Or like Vietnam was the first war that really, like, there were video cameras there, and that people back home were seeing like the horrors of war, like almost in real time. And this head of the Black Student Union and my professor was like, this was like so significant when it came to like sort of imagery and the imagery and the effect that it had in the populace. And this student's like, you think that's the most important shit? What about slavery? And my professor's like, well, yeah, of course, slavery's terrible, but there weren't like video cameras. And so, you know, there's a difference, you know? And like my two black friends are like, shut the fuck up, like telling this guy, they're like, why you gotta make everything about this? It's a fucking joke, you know? So that's the type of dude this dude was. Anyways, I knew this professor, and the next year we had a class. It was my last year, and I was graduating, and this dude, head of the Black Student Union, would be graduating with me. We were gonna graduate in the same class. So we had this class in speech communication, and the dude never showed up to class. Like, he showed up the first day of class, and then no one ever saw him again. So you just forget about him. What do I give a shit, you know? And like third to last class, dude bebops in. Okay. And he wanted to talk to the professor after class. And so the professor told me, he was like, yeah, that dude, apparently he had some like death in the family. That's his claim. And so he couldn't show up. And he's like, hey, you know, can I still get a good grade? And the professor was like, no, I'm sorry, you fail. You didn't take any tests. You didn't do any homework. You didn't do any of the papers. Sorry. Try again next semester. You fail. And the professor was like, look, it would have been different if you sent me a message like when it happened and was like, oh my God, I had this terrible tragedy come up. Is there anything I could do? He's like, I certainly would work with someone, but you can't just not show up all semester and then show up the last day and be like, hey. And the university intervened. They were like, no, this guy's the head of the Black Student Union. He needs to graduate. You need to give him an opportunity to pass your class because he needs this class to graduate. So this professor was fucking livid. Was like, this is bullshit. And this opportunity would not have came for another person if it wasn't a person who was in the Black Student Union that the school was intervening. So basically, the professor was like, all right, here's the deal. You're going to write like a 15-page paper covering like the material in the class. And if you do that, I'll give you a C if it's an adequate paper. So the professor said, a couple weeks go by, the semester ends, he's submitting his grades, never received a paper, never received a first draft, never received any communication from this student again. So he gives him an F. And basically, the dean called the professor and was like, yeah, you have to give him an A. And that's it. He got an A. He graduated. Never showed up to class. Then I have another story. My wife has a cousin whose real name is Jerome. He's white. But his real name is Jerome. So he goes over to the university. And he's like fucking around, partying, not going to class. So he gets like, I don't know if it was a call or an email. And this group's like, do you need some tutoring? Do you need some help? Like, what's going on? And he's like, fuck yeah, this group's just going to help me. Like, that's cool. I mean, that's neat. Like, you're struggling. I don't know if he was partying, drinking, if he was working, or if he was just failing his class, whatever. He was not doing good in class. And now the school's like, you could meet. They're reaching out to him. Hey, here's an opportunity to come meet with tutors, we'll help you. And so he rolls in and they're like, who are you? And he's like, I'm Jerome. And they're like, oh. And it turns out it was a Black Student Union thing. They assumed because his name was Jerome, he was black. So once they found out it was white, it was like, oh, we're not that interested in helping you. That's the type of shit that happens. And there was one black student that I had that I became good friends with, who's fucking awesome. He was in these media classes with me. I'm 99% sure, unless some personal tragedy affected him in his life, this dude's more successful than me. I guarantee he's working a good job. Like, fucking dude was brilliant. He's a great guy. I became good friends with him. We had to do like a group project in this one class. We worked like a couple days a week, every week for like 2 months. Really cool guy. He happened to be black, but he grew up in the town. That's why he was at this university. He grew up, went to high school in the area, went to this school. And he used to just sit, like, talk to me after class. He'd be like, God damn. Like, some of these black students that came from, like, Philadelphia that are here, it's like, it's a fucking joke. And he's like, it just gives, like, he's like, I get lumped in just because I'm the same skin color, and it's fucking horseshit. That's the sort of stuff that I'm talking about. But I am pro-segregation, you know, says the DEI supporter. Anyways, fun show today. I enjoyed it. I probably won't stream tomorrow night because I did this stream. So Monday night, you should see me on YouTube only. So look forward to that. Thank you to listen, when it comes to this, like, theme of the show today, God bless fucking blue collar workers. I don't care your skin color, your religion, your sexual orientation. I don't give a fuck about any of that. You're a badass job that's necessary, that's thankless, like being a truck driver, being a welder, being a carpenter, any of these blue collar work. You're doing better than I could, and I fucking tip my cap to you. But it's absurd how we're lowering standards, and we were talking about truck driving specifically, where we're actually forcing these stringent regulations on people that are trying to do things the right way, and then they're fucking somehow shoving through people that can't even speak the language, who are fucking literally bathing in sinks at fucking truck stops, that make the life hell for these truck drivers and people like that, who are forced to go through these stringent regulations and then have their jobs overwhelmed by people that everything's been fucking overlooked for them. It's bullshit, and I feel terrible for them. And when we transition into talking about, like, people of color in, like, what DEI and the unintended consequences, I'm not making any claims whatsoever about this race is better than that race or smarter or anything like that. I'm saying when you lower these standards at the top level, it matriculates down. If the best jobs in the country are saying we're going to have lower standards for people of color, then the second tier jobs are going to have to lower their standards even further. And the third tier's jobs are going to have to lower their standards even further than that. Then when you get down to shit like me, where I'm at a low tier school or a low tier job, it turns out that all of the black people or all the Hispanic people or whatever preferred race DEI is showing, all of the people that are on the same level of me have already been taken by the higher tier jobs. And all of the unintended consequences of what happens when you do that. It's unfair to everyone involved. And it's very difficult to talk about these things because you get assholes like that guy that comes in and is like, you're a racist, you're a segregationist. I'm fucking not. I'm not at all. So I get fucking tired of, you know, the gatekeeping of this. Fuck you. If someone calls you a racist, this is what you ask yourself. Am I a racist? If you are, then you are. If you're not, you say, fuck you. I don't care. Your accusation means jack shit to me. Fuck off. I just don't give a fuck. It means nothing to me. You've overused the term so much, I just don't give a fuck. That's how I feel. And you can see the people that do that, like this Billy John character that was in the chat, they can't defend their fucking position for half a second. They can't. They just want you to ignore the fucking data and the shit that you see every day with your own eyes. They just want you to ignore it. Well, you're against DEI. That means you're a segregationist. You're a racist. Yeah, fuck you. So, all right. Thanks so much, everyone. I'll probably see you on Monday. Be checking out for shorts that will be on YouTube that I put up every day at 2 p.m. I don't know what I'm going to put up today. Should I do a short right now? Let's do a short right now. Right before we leave. I'll show you how I do these shorts. I'll take my headset off for it, though. So there's a lot of talk about SNAP food stamp benefits and whether or not you should be allowed to have unhealthy food like soda on it. I was shocked. I knew that there was a lot of unhealthy food that's bought with food stamps, But if the numbers I'm reading are accurate, like up to 25% of the sales of Coca-Cola actually come from people using their food stamps. And my thought on it is this: as an individual, I think you should be able to make any shitty choice you want. If you want to drink big gulp sugary beverages, if you want to eat salty foods, then go at it. Hell, look at me. I'm a big fat person that's out of shape. So clearly I'm living my life and prioritize that you should have the freedom to make even bad decisions. Same with things like smoking, things of that nature. You should have the freedom to do that. But the calculation changes once the rest of us are paying for your livelihood. For example, take something like WIC, which is a government program that prioritizes sending food and basic necessities to mothers that are trying to provide for their children that are having financial difficulties. You can't go with WIC and buy soda. Why? Well, because we understand that this is about helping babies get nutrition that they need that elsewise they may not be able to get because their family are in a difficult financial situation. Now, whatever you think of the program, if the program's going to exist, then the way it should be ran is to ensure that those children are getting healthy, nutritional things and not sugary beverages and potato chips. Why should it be any different from food stamps? When you lived at home with your parents and you didn't pay bills, it didn't matter if you wanted some sugary snack or you told your parents to buy something that you wanted specifically to eat. They would say, we'll buy what we feel like. And if you want to buy that sugary stuff, well, then you should go get a job and do it. The same should be true of food stamps. If you are reliant on the average taxpayer to fund your meals, then it should be the minimal nutritional meals. I'm not saying that you should have to eat hardtack or shit like that that's like super unappetizing and barely edible, but you shouldn't be able to go buy liters of soda, potato chips. It should be much like WIC, down to produce, healthy food, etc. If you don't like that and you like your potato chips and soda, you absolutely have the right to have potato chips and soda. Get a job and then use your money to buy those potato chips and soda. All of the sort of libertarian-esque right-leaning people that are like, no, we don't like the government stepping in. Well, the problem is the government already stepped in and they're providing them this money in the form of taxpayer dollars in food stamps. And so now that the government's involved, which I agree, we need to massively limit these programs and we have far too much government welfare in this country. But if it's going to exist, I shouldn't be forced to pay for your delicious sugary snacks as opposed to nutritional food and subsidizing a corporation like Coca-Cola. They should be forced to offer options that can compete in the free market, not that are necessary from government intervention that's paying these tax dollars to people. If you're on food stamps, then we should pay for your healthy, nutritional food, and that's it. There. I don't know if you guys could hear that or not. Yeah, that's the talk. RFK's suggesting doing it. So you'll be able to watch that short at 2:00 p.m. on my YouTube channel. But that's how I do the shorts. Now, listen, I say that I do prioritize. Like, I don't want the government telling me, hey, fatso, you can't have chips because you're fat. I don't want that. But if you all have to pay for me, if I'm like, yeah, I don't have a job, and but you can't let me starve to death, so you all collectively have to pay for me. Don't you have like the right to be like, okay, man, but you don't get to go out and fucking eat all this sugary stuff. We're gonna talk about that the next live stream I do. Just to give you a little hint in it, like when I used to bartend, I'd have people all the time come through like, can I borrow money? Can I borrow money? Can I borrow money? And I'd always be like, yeah, man, I'm broke. I don't have money. And they'd look in your tip jar. My dad that was a bartender used to tell me, he's like, dude, don't leave your tip jar out. Like empty it every once in a while. Cause these people would be like, oh, I see you got money in your tip jar. How much you got there? 20 bucks? Can you give me 20 bucks? And then you're like, I'm weak. So I'd be like, I guess, and my dad would be like, no, just tell them you don't have money and hide the tip jar. Take it out in your pocket every once in a while. Okay, great, fine. But like people would borrow money and be like, hey, I had to borrow money. And part of you'd feel bad. You'd be like, yeah, man, you want to have a beer with your friends. You got to go get groceries. You need 20 bucks. Here you go, man. And then you'd watch them put them in the poker machine. Buy tickets, gamble the money away. And it's like, well, fuck, man, I could have gambled the money away. I'm sitting here busting my ass working, and then the guy begging for charity, I think, oh, he needs charity so he can get a warm meal or so he can hang out with his friends and have a beer. No, he's fucking gambling the money away. Why should I pay for that? Fuck you, man. No more money. Same here. If I have to pay for you so that you could get food stamps, okay, fine. I guess that's the deal we have in our society. So be it. But you shouldn't be getting filet mignon or fucking 2 liters of soda. Sorry. So, anyways, that's what we'll be talking about. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoyed the stream. Hope you all did as well. Look forward to seeing you all probably Monday evening on YouTube only. As always, have a good one.